Today we are dedicating our session to the concept of filming couples and filming duos. And we are going to start with the works by Anna Rose and Katie Sattler. They come from the US. Anna Rose is based in Berlin now. And we are going to see both movies. We are going to start by Quell, who has been directed by both, and then we will see Prelude, who is a work mainly directed by Katie Sattler.
you.
Entonces, esta sesión está abierta a preguntas del público. Si queréis preguntar incluso en español, podemos traducir. So this is open also to questions from the audience. But first, we would like that you present yourselves. We have so Anna Rose, who is both choreographer and director in this case, and Katie, who is director. So you have the microphone. Let's start with you. How did you come to get into screen dance, and what is your role somehow?
My name is Anna, and so yes, I have my background is in dance, and I work as a dancer and a choreographer. Katie and I met while we were in university, and I was studying dance and she was studying film. So I had the idea for this project. What you just saw is the last 2 parts of a 3-part series that's dealing with the dying phases of a relationship. And so the vision I had initially was for it to be a film, and I didn't have the skill set and the know-how to make that happen. And Katie and I had worked together a bit in school, and so
you're talking about In Between, about a prelude.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And so I brought the idea to Katie to see, if she wanted to collaborate on this, and so that's how we got where we are now.
So you were still at the university when this happened? So
yes,
okay.
We had just graduated when we started creating this series.
So please, Katie.
I'm Katie. So I am mostly a filmmaker, but I have a background in dance, danced my whole life, and also minored in dance at school, but I primarily use film now to explore my love for dance, even though I don't do it as much physically. But so Anna and I began this project when I was still in school, and we made it for no money. We had no money to make this, and also just made it on very small, like DSLR cameras. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It's part of a 3-part series. And the first one is called Threnody, which basically means a funeral song, like a swan song. The second one, which you saw with the white void, it's called Quell, which basically means to smother or put an end to. And the last one is Prelude. So, what do you want? Where do we go from there?
Bueno, lo sorprendente, I'm just translating some points. Se conocieron en la universidad y esto es un trabajo que surgió un poco de una idea de Anna, que quería hacer directamente este film de danza, y lo hicieron prácticamente sin medios. Y entonces este es su primer proyecto donde Anna contactó con Katie para ver lo que le interesaba. Let's talk a little bit about Quell as a project. So that's surprising. You as a choreographer wanted to make this film, to create this choreography just for film. So it was really your idea. It wasn't a stage choreography that you wanted to turn.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't want to do was just have choreography and just film it with the camera. And I feel like that is very common with dance film, because it started through dancers, and many dancers don't have a good understanding of like the technical aspects of film. And so we really wanted to make something that told a story through choreography, but was also a cinematic experience.
Yeah, so the choreography, it was a start to finish section, it was a piece that I created, but I made it with the intention of having it be filmed. and with the intention, of having certain moments where you see a lot of the close-ups and the fast sequence repetition. And yeah, really, I don't think this work, it wouldn't have manifested in the way that I envisioned and we envisioned without the help of those cinematic tools. So, when you put something on a stage, you can't just direct the audience's eye in quite the same way. And so we also really wanted to use film to be able to illustrate certain moments of intimacy and capture more nuance in the sort of tone of touch and tone of embrace, and is it more something that's more tender or has a bit more of a sinister, violent feel? And so we were very reliant on the film to create that effect.
And so the difference between Quell and Prelude is also an exterior versus a cinematic, a theatrical, or at least a studio. I was watching again and taking some captures, and moving away from this because it reverberates. About Prelude, the light that you have there is so astonishing. It looks like a big production, Hollywood, like everything has been measured, etc. And it's so soft on the skin that, well, of course, accompanied by the beautiful movement, this flowing movement, this choreography, which is really interesting. I don't know what part is from you and what the dancers propose, but this flow, it's so interesting. But the light is so beautiful. I don't know if you waited for the perfect day, or we went out, it was this light, and if it had been another day, it would have been another light.
We got blessed with the light and the weather. Everything was perfect. And we kind of planned it with the leaves in bloom. We shot this in upstate New York. But no, most of it was just luck. And I think it really heightens the production value. And also, because we were shooting on such small cameras, and one way that we made it more cinematic was we shot it on a stabilizer, like a gimbal, and also shot it all in slow motion. So one of our intentions with the piece as well was to have each part of the series be very different visually and be able to hold up on its own, but also be part of this cohesive piece that tells a larger story when you watch them from start to finish.
Okay, and the light in in Quell, how did you decide it? And how did you manage to get this beautiful white background? This is the envy of many filmmakers to get something that gets so abstract and so white. So
my vision for that was that we're seeing this duet happen in this sort of white void, blank space. And I thought about smoke a little bit, so then I told this to Katie, and Katie.
Yeah, so we filmed this in a white cyclorama studio, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but if you light it evenly enough, and it gets rid of all the shadows, so it kind of just seems like these dancers are dancing in a cloud. And a big theme of the piece was, like, visual theme in the choreography was choking, and
sorry, choking or joking?
Choking.
Choking.
No joking there.
El tema principal subyacente en Quell, la que está en el fondo blanco, es el atragantarse o el estrangular.
Yes, and like asphyxiation. So we also thought the smoke theme kind of played well into that. And basically, I created this machine with, I had a fog machine, and in order for the smoke to stay on the ground so that the dancers could dance in it, you have to cool it down. So I made a fog chiller where you put ice through a tube in the fog machine, and then all of the smoke stays on the ground because it's heavy and weighted down. But I think it provided a really cool element into the dance. And also because each of the shots is so static, and provides some extra movement in there.
And one last question, and then we will have more time for the audience to cook you. I'm cooking you right now. Again, I liked very much both films. I would like to know, so in Quell you say both of you are directors. In Prelude it's only Katie and Anna is the choreographer. Besides, this is a very important question and recurring. Who is the author of a screen dance film? It's always a question which is never solved. Maybe it's not interesting to solve it. But in your case, it is interesting that in one case you are not directing, and the other case you consider that you are directing. And somehow, what comes first, the choreographic idea or the filming? Do you decide the filming, the shooting, etc., once the choreography is more or less established, or do you have, like, I want to shoot in this place with these shots, and then I create the choreography for that?
Sure, yeah. So.
And who is the boss? That's what I want to know.
Well, we're co-bosses, collaborate. Try not to boss each other around. So Prelude, as you saw, I'm dancing in, so that was a big reason that I was more removed from the directorial role. So we did have quite a different process for the two. You know, Quell was a very set choreography that we shot, and you know, you're pretty much seeing it start to finish with some edits and some things, but then Prelude, we had a series of movement motifs that I'd created, and Stanley, the other dancer, and I spent a lot of time in the studio playing around with these different movement motifs and ideas. And then Katie and I, decided where we wanted to shoot, and of course we made a shot list and went up there and had a look around, and got on the same page with the mood and the feeling we wanted to create and kind of how we wanted to tell that story. But then once we got out there, I was dancing and Katie was very much so leading the whole thing.
Yeah, I think what makes Prelude unique is that it's mostly just improv, and I think one of the reasons I'm mostly considered
It's improv.
It's improv, yeah. Mostly.
Entonces, Prelude, el dúo en la naturaleza, es principalmente improvisado. And I wanted to ask, sorry to interrupt you, we have a cinematographer, Carissa Henderson.
Yeah.
So she was kind of improvising with the dancers as well?
Yeah, exactly. So I know I worked with Carissa, the cinematographer, to kind of create this vibe of circular motion. So she also has a movement background too, which helps. So with the slow motion and the stabilizer, I basically had her circle around the couple while they were dancing. So she was actually moving very fast, but because it was in slow motion, you can't tell. But
how slow? What's the ratio?
It was shot at 120 frames per second, so pretty slow. But so lots of circling, lots of like push-ins. In general, just a lot of movement. But I'd say it was definitely a difficult task to edit because it was all improv and finding a story structure within that, but also having to make it a little bit more experimental because there isn't like straight choreography. Yeah, it was fun. It's a fun challenge to edit improv.
Okay, so maybe we are going to continue with the session, and we will call you back later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we are going to watch now the films by the Samaya wives. who just arrived. So if maybe it will be easier, we watch them in one after the other, and then we ask you questions, right? We are going to start. Vamos a empezar por una película muy breve, el conocimiento entre nosotras dos, The Knowledge Between Us, y luego iremos viendo Pink Blue y Autumn. Directly from Australia, the Samaya wives. This one.
Thank you.
So, well, thank you for being here. You came from Europe, no? You don't come directly from Australia, actually?
Yeah, we came from Berlin, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
We've recently moved to Berlin. So.
okay. So, apparently Berlin is really a location that attracts people around the world. And I hope you enjoy it. But the weather is much nicer in Valencia.
Much nicer.
So, please present a bit of yourselves. What's your trajectory? Was it dance first for both, or how did you start doing a screen dance? Please.
Okay, so we are the Samaya wives. Can you hear me? I'm not used to talking on a microphone.
Yes,
she does. I'm Pippa Samaya and this is Tara Samaya. And we have been married for 5 years and we've known each other for about 12. And so it's been a long and organic process, I think, for us to be creating. I'm predominantly a photographer and I specialise in dance photography. And Tara is a dancer. And I think it was maybe in India 6 years ago that you announced you might think we should make a film.
We started to realise when we first started to hang out, when we started to talk about art in our respective forms of dance performance and photography, we both came from a love of movement and the body as an expression, and how it could possess different things and create different images that people can relate to, connect with, and help them to understand the human condition. So we were slightly obsessed with the body, and I come from inside with an inside understanding of that through my process of training and working and performing, and Pippa has observed it from the outside through her photography. And we both do visual arts, and we both specialise in the body. So when we first started to hang out, we realised that we created pictures and not just visual stimuli and design-wise, but also conceptually we designed things together, including the body. And when, like she was just saying, in India, we travelled. This was before we got married, when we were courting each other, and we had this idea that I had this idea that I would meet her and make a photographic series. However, I wanted to share with and expose with people outside my world how time is, like, to take time to experience what I'm experiencing in different locations. So in India, we really extended into film as a natural thing to realise time and contain it and hold it. And this was many years ago. So now this is like a little chapter in the story of our process.
So first, I mean, it was like the human meeting of you two, and then the creative meeting of you two. So the creative couple came after the life couple.
Symbiotic. It was all at the same time.
Actually, the topic of this session, I mean, we have been moving people here and there, and we are very happy to have you here. It's about filming duos and couples. So in this case, we are talking also about the couple, the creative couple and the real life couple. But in general, I was asking before about the relation between the choreographer and the filmmaker, I find that when there is really a compenetration, a deep understanding and a trust, and somehow that everything gets built together, these pieces reach something that for instance, a very good filmmaker alone trying to convey their vision on this has to be like this and like that, and maybe they can be great visual artists, etc. But if there is not this complementation between the choreographer and the filmmaker, it doesn't have the same strength. So you are very lucky to be working and to really have found this creative symbiosis.
Gracias.
I would like maybe, and if there are questions, please ask. Maybe we can go through the different films, and so I noticed, above all, in Oten there is a lot of the presence of fine arts and materials and things that have a really like a fine art component to it. So apparently it's also because of the context in which you created it, and this gallery that asked you. So if you can explain us a bit what the title means and what's the concept of Oten, please.
The title is a Japanese word, and it essentially has like kind of a whole bunch of meanings, but they all revolve around some kind of a stain or a mark or a spot you can't get off. And the concept around this film was really looking into, I suppose, being a perfectionist. It begins that way. I don't know if you can pick that up or not, but and trying to control your world and every little detail in it, and then the ultimate surrender into the reality that we actually can't control anything, and that is beautiful. So really a homage to Wabi Sabi, to the perfection in imperfection, is what this film is about. Do you want to?
Just to add, from your observation, the quality of this fine art edge was definitely based and developed from the context we knew that it would be shown, but also to relay the concept of having this serene, perfect, indoor, controlled environment to having a wild ocean that doesn't know which way it's going. With every breaking wave, there's always the undercurrent of the next thing. And so sometimes surrender is what we have to do. And so this was a nice juxtaposition and contrast we liked to possess in the editing and finding the locations for this particular film.
And talking about editing, I would like also, looking again into those films, there is a lot of virtuosity in not only in the editing, but also kind of on the visual effects. For instance, the circling of your robe, the white robe on that, you're sliding up and down, which it looks so natural. I mean, it looks like really someone is going up and down, but I mean, I wouldn't know how to make it. I mean, it's really a bravura piece about that. And even the first one, The Knowledge Between Us, just the levitation of the people, you make it in a way that it looks like, oh, okay, they're levitating, and then you say, no, that's not possible, so how did they do it? Beyond that, I would like to know, I mean, you are symbiotic in your process, but is the movement and somehow the body movement and dance that comes first and then you try to capture it? Or do you want to get, like, I want to get this thing on the image and I'm going to build the choreography or the movement for that? And also if you can explain how did you do it, the techniques behind all these elements of which need a lot of post-production, but how you built it also in the body.
Did you want to? I think, I mean, that's one thing we really enjoy is trying to push the impossible. Like we almost supernatural kind of stuff, but to actually do it in camera as much as possible. So most of it isn't edited. Obviously there's reverse filming with that sucking backwards, but otherwise just to have amazing dancers that can do incredible things.
I think that what Pippa said about trying to have abilities and trying to attain and have goals that are not against all the laws of what we defy as possible is a really important element, because we're writing our own rules as artists, and it's very important to continue to break what you think is possible. And with the utilization of the camera, we can create ways to, like theatre, but in a different way, create ways through editing that when we go to shoot something, we know that we're going to do this in reverse, we know that we're going to show this in slow motion, we know sometimes this is the way. For The Knowledge Between Us, I had a few small pictures that I had drawn with 2 suitcases full of books that we took down into a young volcano in Victoria, outside of Melbourne, and we were in an impossible slope. Like the bags just rolled. We could not hold them. It was so steep. But this one always makes me do the most adventurous things. And because of these circumstances on a hot Australian afternoon with all the flies, this experience actually enters into the psyche and the conceptual idea of taking people to that place. And to do impossible things like that flying move, I mean, I'm very lucky to have a strong and able body that's trained, but also asking the right people to work with me. And she's so good at filming and photography that I know that she'll get it, so I don't have to repeat it too many times. Actually, I hit my shin during that shot, and it started to pour with blood very quickly, a lot of blood, and we were very far away from anything. So I had this, things like this could happen, but I try these things, and I did it again because she wanted to get a photo of it, but we had to do it very quickly.
A photo of it, like you bleeding, or
no, a photo of the double image.
Okay.
Yeah. There was no super composition. It was just purely done. But we often start in a shoot where it's more of an improvised shoot. This is not the same for Oten. That was very different. That had a very specific storyboard, and we had a very strong idea of how it was going to be in the finished product before we even started editing it. But for most of our films before this year, it has been a situation where we have this driving concept. We have these visual images that start to fuel the driving concept and vice versa. And then we try and attain those images, and then something's ignited. And through the experience of actually physically trying to attain these still images, we find a dance. And in that dance, I generally launch into improvisation and let the location and all those interactions feed into my experience. And the dance is actually found between her eye and my dance. I mean the dance of the film.
Okay. And just to finish, let's talk a little bit about pink blue. So it's not pink for the girls, blue for the boys. So let us know what the meaning is. But in this film also, I believe, and I would like your comment, that there is a lot of choreography on stage or in live, but there is the editing introduces a lot of choreography with the rhythm, with the changes of I don't know, the shot size and all that. So if you can talk about it.
I'll let Pip talk. I'll just say one thing. This particular one was driven by a track that we had the visual artist who did the paint. We had myself and my dancer brother, Jimmy, and we were finally together again, so we optimised the time and we all came together, and the track of music actually created and the mould of where our departure point into this particular piece.
So in this case, the music, did you hear the music when you were dancing, recording?
Yeah,
yes?
yeah. It was in the room. It was in the room over a 4 or 5 hour period of time, over and over and over. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, no, it wasn't choreographed at all, this movement. Yeah, it was all quite, we were just all getting together to have a play, really. And then I guess, choreographed the movement through how we cut it together. But obviously we work together with that. I always check in, make sure that you're okay with what I'm doing to your dance. But
chronologically because of the paint.
But we did have to work, yeah, chronologically, because we were actually applying paint throughout. So we would, at some point I would be like, freeze, and they'd have to freeze, and then the painter would run in and slap on more and then get out and they'd continue. So it kind of, yeah, went like that. So I couldn't edit backwards, which was tricky. But as far as the pink blue, it's sort of, it does have that meaning in a way. Like I use those colours because they stereotypically sort of symbolise the male-female, but it's very much actually about the androgynous, and both Tara and Jimmy, as well as looking crazily the same, which we did play on, we thought they're both actually very androgynous, and we find that very interesting, and actually a lot of our work explores sort of breaking out of gender roles. Yeah.
Good. Any question?
As you said in this second movie, this Pink Blue, you knew the music before, right? So you just adapted the timing of the music to the of the video to the music. But in the other ones, it was the music made after the video was done. And what were like the cues for the composer or musician to create this music?
The music for most of our other films, other than Pink Blue, are post-production, applied post-shooting, and it's part of the edit. And it's kind of Pippa's role to play composer to original tracks. So they modified through the way she plays with timing in the dance in relationship to the sound. So she manipulates the sound also. So I'm not sure whether
That's for the last ones, right?
For Oten and also for The Knowledge Between Us and majority of our films. It's part of her improvisational score. So my improvisation happens during the day of shooting and Pippa's happens post. So we give her the license to play with that. So the composition is, there's like an original composition and she modifies it accordingly.
So when you made the video, you knew you were going to listen something similar, no?
We had like a 20-minute track that we'd had made by a friend who's an incredible musician for a short dance work. Yeah. Which then we approached her and said, hey, how would you feel about this?
And then got
because it's incredibly beautiful, and I thought I want to give this more life. And she was really excited about it and gave me full lease over it. So then I sort of took what I wanted from that to compose around. But that definitely happened after all the shooting.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Gracias.
Would you say that you were filming a couple, yes or no? Or how would you define the relation or how you intended to film?
I believe in most of the examples today, we fit into the duo category. And the reason for that is, I mean, we're in a unique relationship. We're a unique couple to begin with because we're the same sex. So I feel like our work stems from an idea of breaking the boundaries of what roles are in relationships. And so I think it very strongly fits into the duo. But there is something interesting about the concepts behind that you differentiate between the duo and coupling. And for me, as a performer that looks into the lens or past or considers the lens that my wife is shooting behind, feels like even as a solo performer, I am experiencing a coupling with Pippa. So, and sometimes we do a lot of location-based things. Sometimes I feel like we are coupled together. Sometimes I feel like I'm coming from the experience of what my sensory perception is of an object or a thing in space. And the thing that you pointed out and noticed with my relationships of being outward, I feel like is a result of dancers having a sensory perception that is different when working in improvisation, because improvisation is something that eventuates in the now. It is contemporary art in the essence. And because of that, dancers generally go into a place of understanding space, time through touch, and that sense, and less about the priority of using the eyes to the other to know where everything is. So we're kind of practicing the skill of other senses being at play. So I feel like that's a really strong essence of the duo work that I did, which I hadn't considered before, so thank you.
Welcome. Jan, if you...
I just wanted to comment. I was thinking, it's a lot of echo in this one. I was reflecting on your, and is it James? On your looks in the camera. I find them really fascinating, and maybe you are you give me hint of what's behind the look, but that's really well done, I must say. Was there a question?
Well, in your case, also you cannot escape the couple thing. You are a couple.
Yes,
and,
of course. I'm Antoinette. That's on the film. Is my wife. So we are a couple. And of course that, we couldn't escape it, and we didn't want to escape it because it is about a couple. Also about that, I wanted to. It was planned and filmed quite traditional filming with those shots, over shoulder shots, and so. But it was basically, it came to be in the editing. The whole film, I think I redid it 3 times. It was like 3 totally different movies. I was totally not happy, and the last one was okay. Now I got it. So it was a very big editing work. So we had all of those clashes. We were both, Antoinette and me, were fascinated with those bangings, clashings, and so it came a lot from that, and then it came to be in the editing.
And so please, Katie and or Anna, who wants to speak first?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about those shots that you picked up on. I'm very impressed, but especially like for Quell, if you want to go, can you go back? You'll see the shot from above that you talked about, which we actually didn't plan beforehand. We just kind of rigged it up on the same day, and we thought it was cool. But I love the way that it creates this sense of separation and kind of like a voyeuristic lens to view this couple from. And it's actually something that I enjoyed watching after the fact, but you can see like how the power dynamic kind of changes when his body physically looks a lot larger when he's peering over her, and also vice versa when she's above him. But yeah, and then
Yeah, I mean, Katie said it, but I would just add that, filming the way that we filmed, I think what we were trying to do, and hopefully worked out, is that to allow the audience to be a fly on the wall in a way that you couldn't be if you were just in a proscenium setting, or if you were just watching 2 people live in space. yeah, I mean, because it was definitely filmed, you know, in a way that they're dancing for each other, they're looking at each other. It's not a presentational work.
And also, the fact that often we don't have like the classical shot, like establishing shot, then the point of view of the other and the reverse point of view. In dance, especially in your pieces, for instance, in this one, where you said it was kind of improvised, it's because this way of shooting implies a lot of do this, we shoot it, now stop, start and do exactly the same thing from this point of view, stop, start and do this thing from the reverse point of view. So knowing that this is improvised, well, I suppose that you remade or rebuilt some things. I am amazed that you managed, in all the cases, to have this feeling of I'm looking at you, you are looking at me, and it's not just the camera doing things. There is this sense of editing, but I suppose that you would have, you wouldn't have been able to use improvisation and do the classical shooting. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, exactly. And most of it was improvised, but we did have a few movement phrases that we knew we wanted to include, and one of those was kind of this like brushing technique, which created a sense of intimacy with the piece. But the one thing that we did kind of choreograph for this was this last shot. That's the ending, because we needed an ending. I know. I'm sorry. It's not as impressive. But you know, we needed an ending, and this was a great way to do it. And a lot of the way that we created the tension within the relationships was holding on shots. And if you can remember, a lot of the shots are very, very long and slow. And that is one of my favorite shots, that last shot where the camera is pulling out and it's like very, very, very slow, but they're also moving and they're also like looking at each other and then they look away. So there's a lot of different forms of movement going on. But yeah.
And just to finish, the three movies that I saw from your collaboration are about couples. Is it because you started with this and you want to explore that, or it's really something that is your point of interest? And will we have more couple films later on?
Maybe. We'll see. No, it was just the work that I had this vision of or idea for was a series of couples that's following a woman who's a different dancer, of course, in each of the films, but is occupying a sort of perhaps slightly archetypal or similar role as she's sort of traveling through each of these phases of a relationship or manifestations. So that was the reason for it.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I love making dance films is this opportunity to try to communicate without any dialogue, and I feel like that is often rare as a filmmaker. And I think doing that so through couples is awesome. It's such a great way to experiment with filmmaking, and you can really, really pick up on a story between two people and the relationship between two people through choreography. And I love hearing people's thoughts who aren't dancers or don't really know dance, but still connect to these pieces, because the story can be told just as well through movement without any dialogue.
Which again, it's also a very American characteristic. Narrativity is so strong in American films, like direct narrativity. So, any urgent question? So, we are going to continue with the session. We are a bit late, so thank you very much. And all these couples and creative couples and, I don't know, banging couples, please continue. You are doing such a wonderful work, and I hope that these different symbioses go further on. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.